Mid-February 1943, Tunisia. The desert sun beats down on a single American Sherman tank, halted in the sand, its familiar white star barely visible beneath the hastily painted German cross. German officers from the heavy Panzer Battalion 501 gather around this captured machine, notebooks in hand, eyes wide with disbelief. This wasn't just another trophy of war. It was intact, operational, and unlike anything they had faced before. They had expected a vehicle that would falter, a machine they could dismantle for intelligence. Instead, they found reliability, endurance, and a level of industrial design that contradicted everything German engineers thought they knew. War Daddy 2, as the tank was named, carried not just the serial number USA 307641, but the unspoken truth that the mathematics of armored warfare were about to be rewritten. For years, German doctrine had assumed that technical specifications, armor thickness, firepower, and tactical ingenuity were the ultimate determinants of battlefield superiority. But as the Germans watched this Sherman soldier through 350 kilometers of punishing desert terrain without a single mechanical failure, a new realization began to dawn. Endurance, simplicity, and practical engineering could outmatch raw technical sophistication every single time. The story of War Daddy 2 would expose Germany's blind spot and reveal how industrial capacity could decide the fate of battles, nations, and ultimately the war itself. When War Daddy 2 fell into German hands, it was more than just a captured vehicle. It was an anomaly. Panzer Battalion 501 had little time to marvel. Orders were clear. This tank had to be transported to Germany, intact and functional. Over the course of 4.5 grueling days, reconnaissance units drove the Sherman 350 kilometers across North African terrain, from the battlefield to the port of Sfax. Every kilometer tested assumptions, desert heat, shifting sands, and rugged tracks that would have crippled. German Panther units seemed to barely ruffle the Sherman. Its Continental R975 radial engine maintained steady power, the transmission worked flawlessly, and the final drives functioned without complaint. A stark contrast to the constant mechanical stops the Germans had come to expect. Observers couldn't hide their unease. What was supposed to be an exercise in logistical triumph for German forces turned into an industrial revelation. The Americans had produced a vehicle that, despite being simpler on paper than their own tanks, outperformed German engineering in the one area that truly mattered: field reliability. By the time War Daddy 2 reached the port and was loaded for shipment to Germany, it had already rewritten the expectations for enemy machinery. And yet, this was only the beginning. What awaited the Sherman in Germany would reveal even more unsettling truths for the German military. Spring 1943 brought War Daddy 2 to the Kumisdorf proving grounds south of Berlin, where German engineers were poised for a meticulous examination. The Sherman rolled off the transport railcar bearing its new German designation, Zugfahrts 259, and license plate WH058941. Engineers from multiple branches converged, cameras flashing, instruments ready. Every component was measured, every clearance inspected, and every joint photographed. The Germans were prepared to find flaws, weaknesses that would validate their assumptions about American industrial limitations. Instead, they discovered something far more unsettling. The transmission alone caught immediate attention. Unlike German tanks, which relied on straight-cut gears, requiring extreme precision and constant maintenance, the Sherman featured herringbone gears, distributing stress evenly across teeth, a design familiar to American automotive engineers since the 1930s. It was durable, simple, and most importantly, it worked without constant adjustment. The engine impressed equally. Air filtration managed desert sands. effortlessly, and the cooling system kept the Sherman operating at peak performance in temperatures that would have crippled German power plants. At Kumisdorf, the Germans realized that reliability had been built into every system, from the transmission to the final drives, in ways their own vehicles could not match. And the implications were clear. Germany's technological elegance had been no match for the practical, mass-producible engineering of the Sherman. As testing progressed, German engineers were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about design philosophy. The Sherman's synchronized manual transmission, with 5 forward speeds and 1 reverse, eliminated the need for double clutching, a task German crews had trained for months to master. This meant ordinary soldiers, with minimal automotive knowledge, could drive and maintain the tank effectively. Every mechanical system had been designed for durability, not for the sake of technical complexity or aesthetic engineering. Perfection. The engine's tolerance for extreme operating conditions, the reliability of the final drives, and the simplicity of repair all reflected decades of American automotive experience applied to military machinery. In contrast, German designs demanded highly specialized crews, constant maintenance, and exacting precision, making field operations fraught with the risk of breakdowns. The Germans documented every finding, yet even their meticulous records could not mask the growing alarm. The Sherman worked flawlessly under conditions that regularly crippled German vehicles. The practical lesson was inescapable. Simplicity, standardization, and reliability could outweigh raw firepower, armor, or technical sophistication. And that lesson was about to be dramatically confirmed in field trials. June 6 to 7, 1943, Hillesleben Artillery Range. The Sherman, now part of a side-by-side comparison, faced the mightiest German designs, the Panther Asif Diem and the Ferdinand tank destroyer. Officials from the Armaments Ministry, including Albert Speer himself, watched closely. The Sherman climbed slopes smoothly, engine and transmission maintaining perfect function. The Panther struggled, barely matching the ascent with far greater effort. The Ferdinand stalled halfway up, leaving recovery crews scrambling under the gaze of senior officers. Even the Reich's armaments minister could not ignore the truth. Here was a machine that, while less imposing on paper, was far more reliable in practice. Observers marveled at the Sherman's ease of operation and mechanical resilience. It was evident that operational effectiveness was not dictated solely by horsepower or armor thickness. Consistent performance in the field mattered most. And yet, German pride, coupled with limited industrial flexibility, meant these revelations would remain uncomfortable truths, recorded meticulously, acknowledged privately, but difficult to act upon on a wartime production scale. Through the summer and autumn of 1943, War Daddy 2 underwent systematic trials replicating real combat conditions. Engineers drove it across hundreds of kilometers, testing fuel consumption, transmission wear, and drivetrain efficiency. Every component that failed in German tanks operated flawlessly here. The extended operational range exceeded 2,000 kilometers without major maintenance, a figure unmatched by the Panther or Tiger. Even variants like the British Firefly, upgraded with larger guns, highlighted the Sherman's inherent adaptability. Its turret ring and design allowed upgrades without full redesign, a flexibility German tanks lacked entirely. Field data reinforced laboratory findings. German officers noted that Shermans required minimal maintenance, enabling crews to focus on tactics rather than constant repairs. Panthers and Tigers, by contrast, broke down frequently, sometimes losing more vehicles to mechanical failure than to enemy fire. By 1944, the contrast between German technical ambition and American practical engineering was impossible to ignore. Captured Shermans were not just studied, They were pressed into German service, and their reliability became immediately apparent. Units such as the 10th SS Panzer Division used them in reconnaissance and mobile reserve roles, where constant movement without maintenance was critical. German crews who had spent months struggling with Panther breakdowns marveled at how the Sherman simply worked. Letters and reports highlighted the extraordinary mechanical dependability, ease of operation, and low-maintenance design. These vehicles, even in enemy hands, could perform sustained operations that German designs could not, exposing the fundamental flaw in German armored strategy. Technical sophistication alone could not substitute for practical reliability. The captured tanks became living proof that German assumptions about armored superiority were fatally flawed. The larger lesson was industrial. American tanks benefit from decades of civilian automotive engineering, mass production, standardized parts, and workers with broad automotive experience. German tanks, though technically sophisticated, required specialized assembly, precision tolerances, and constant expert attention. Supply chain bottlenecks, Allied bombing, and labor issues further degraded German production quality. Shermans, by contrast, were produced at unprecedented rates, using standardized components, and maintained consistently across theaters by crews with basic training. The operational outcome was stark. German technical superiority was irrelevant if vehicles could not reach the battlefield or complete their mission. The Sherman exemplified a holistic approach to warfare. Industrial strength and reliability, not theoretical excellence, determined victory. War Daddy 2, along with the hundreds of other Shermans tested at Kumisdorf, left a legacy far beyond World War II. Post-war, German engineers consciously incorporated these lessons into designs like the Leopard 1, prioritizing reliability, maintainability, and standardized components over raw, technical specifications. The Sherman didn't win through armor thickness or firepower alone. It won because it functioned when needed. Every kilometer War Daddy 2 drove, without failure, was proof that German design philosophy had misjudged the war's true requirements. The contrast between American industrial maturity and German technical ambition underscores a timeless principle. In modern, mechanized warfare, a weapon that works reliably wins far more battles than a theoretically superior machine that fails when called upon. War Daddy 2 was just one tank, but its story revealed the decisive truth of industrial warfare. Reliability, mass production, and practical engineering ultimately outweigh technical sophistication, and that lesson shaped tank design for generations to come.